Last week I was in night shift. I woke up from a power nap. I made a quick coffee for myself and then I walked into my lab. I opened my device and stared at it with a real blank face. Literally thousands of alerts were pending and I didn't even know from where I can start, what actually I should do. I was so frustrated. It felt like, what the hell is going on? Everything seems to be wrong. I am like burning inside out and it was like I am totally breaking up. So have you experienced the same kind of emotion in your lifetime? If so, today's episode for you guys. Today's episode is for all of my SOC warriors. There is actually a study made by Cisco in way 2017 where actually they showed literally 44% of alerts in SOC aren't even investigated. So what does that mean? More workforces, more burning hours, more midnight fuels, and it's like more coffee? Well, hell no. So there is only one reason for that. That is false positives. So in today's episode, I'm gonna give you 9 fabulous tips by which you can eliminate all those life-sucking creatures named false positives. And also I will show you how you can navigate through your log sources in your SIEM, how you can actually analyze the alerts in the SIEM. So this gonna be a real life use case with a case study. So stick around and listen with opening all of your vital organs. Let's begin the game. Tip number 1. You should or must actually define what is false positives. Yes, so if there is an alert or any detection and which doesn't even have an action item tagged to it, it's simply false positive. So in that case, you have to ask your boss or you have to ask your manager if these are the alerts that I received or my team received, what should be the action item that I'm gonna take. And if your manager is like I don't know, or maybe none, so that's a real false positives. So what is the easiest way? I'm not saying that if an alert that doesn't have an action item doesn't require to be triggered or monitored, right? So you can trigger them or you can accumulate them in a weekly or like monthly or bi-weekly reports, and your team can go through the reports and analyze that. But that doesn't really mean that you have to open a ticket for all those alerts. Tip number 2. So you have to get rid of all of your irrelevant rules. Okay, so there are SIEMs in the market. When you actually onboard it comes up hell lot of rules out of the box. So at some times it can give you like hundreds of rules from hundreds of different log sources, and you might not have all those log sources integrated to your organization, right? So you need to get rid of all those rules and all those log sources which you don't even have. If you keep them running, so they will unnecessarily trigger a hell lot of false positives, and that means a literal cry for you. Tip number 3. Tune the rules for your specific organization threshold. Okay, so what does that even mean? So if a rule comes by default out of the box, it obviously would have something like out of the box threshold. Okay, and that threshold might not be relevant for your organizations. Okay, so there could be several organizations, right? Like finance department, then FMGC, then IT, then banking, a hell lot of other organizations as well, right? So for me, if I work in an IT background or if I am working in an IT organization, like system lockout or those kind of use cases might have a like 5 time user logged into a system and the failed login attempts, so I can lock out that. But if that is the case for a FMGC, that might not happen. So they might have like 15 different failed login attempts, right? So depending on your organization need, you have to tune and you have to give the threshold, and don't rely on anything which is coming out of the box. You are gonna fail miserably. Tip number 4. So content is your best friend. Okay, so there are SIEM in the market which provides the contextualization. Okay, so go ahead and ask your SIEM vendor that, hey, do you have a CMDB or a change management database integrated in your SIEM, or is there an option that you can actually integrate an CMDB? Okay, let me give you a quick example. Okay, so let's think about SQL injection. So yeah, SQL injection means a real threat, right? And if your SIEM has detected an SQL injection on one of your server, it has to be a real critical and a power bombing alert, right? But now tell me one thing, if that server doesn't even have an SQL client or an SQL application running on your system, so that doesn't qualify for an alert which should be investigated by opening a ticket or like follow the IR process, right? So it has to be a low level alert, and it has to go through via your report channel that you have built in first 1 or 2 steps, right? So use that mechanism, and remember that contextualization is very much important to reduce your false positives. Tip number 5. So you have to adjust the criticality of your environment. Okay, so it quietly like similar with the previous thing, where actually I have told you to maintain the threshold according to your organization need. Okay, but it also dependent that some of the SIEM vendors does like that, it can generate hell lot of alerts, and they tend to give like very critical or very high level of like criticality for any kind of alerts. That is like their industry threshold. I don't even understand how they actually do that. But depending on your organization need, you have to give the proper criticality of a particular alert. So then only you will be able to understand, hey, what is the proper alert that should be flown to my incident response playbook, and I should have opened a ticket and incident is properly, and which I should trigger as an like monthly or as a weekly alert or like reports. Then my analyst can look into them. Tip number 6. Use your geolocation data and threat intelligence with your SIEM. So if you are not using a proper threat intelligence platform or solution, you might be ending up like creating thousands of false positives. So again, let me give you a quick example. So maybe there is an alert or there is a rule which triggers for like UEBA, unauthorized, or like user behavioral approach, right? So atypical travel. So sometime it might trigger that one user has switched their accounts, or one user has logged in from one IP address, and after 15 minutes you can have a same login with the same user but from like a IP address which is 1000 miles, right? So we call it as atypical travel. Now tell me one thing, user might have used VPN. So, and nowadays we are working from home, right, due to the COVID pandemic and everything all. So if you are not using your geolocation data, that means you are triggering hell lot of false positives. And again, threat intel is very much important, because there could be several IOCs available in the market which can be directly tagged to a proper threat actor, right? So in that case, your criticality of that alert automatically gets higher, right? So if that is a possibility, you have to use that. But wait, there is an obvious disclaimer. So what is that? If you are using anything like a free source or like open source kind of threat intelligence, they tend to give you more false positives on your previous thing what actually you have been doing. So always you have to be very choosy on what threat intel platform that you can integrate with. So There are a lot of such threat intel platform you can integrate with. I'm not gonna name anything, but you can do it little bit Google and you can get it around them. Okay, so remember that. Tip number 7, you have to trust your security devices. Okay, so I have seen there are a lot of SIEM or lot of SOC actually which triggers alerts where a firewall deny is happening, antivirus is actually cleaning up their machine. So what does that even mean? So my security tools are in such a position that it can actually it is actually doing its job, right? So I have to trust it. So there is no reason that I can create a ticket and just like keeping it like that way for that someone else will come up and close it at a later point of time. That doesn't even make any sense. So you can do a simple correlation rule that hey, if there is a particular machine or there is a particular user for which the infection is occurring again and again, right? So again, threshold based rule depending on your organization, right? So you have to trust your security devices and play around with it. Tip number 8, you have to ignore your low level alerts. So I'm not saying that that doesn't qualify anything, but again, so coming up from my other playlist, okay, so other tips, so you have to properly contextualize and you have to properly give the priorities to your alerts. Okay, so like initial access from the MITRE framework could be a higher possibility from my organization, but that might not be a higher criticality for your organization, right? So in that scenario, you have to ignore or you have to ignore your low level activity or low level alert so that that doesn't pile up your ticketing system and that doesn't create unnecessary pressure on your folks, right? Rather than they can do some threat hunting, they can do some manual monitoring by which you can actually create some good use cases, right? So don't do that. So don't go for low level alerts. So again, create a process by which your low level alerts can be treated as an weekly or bi-weekly report and your analyst can do a quick perform and quick check whether those are investigated or should be investigated, those are event of interest or not. Tip number 9, last but not the least in my all of this list, right? So fine tuning. Yes, so fine tuning is not a one time job, guys. So you have to keep fine tuning your rule and you have to talk with your content management team, right? So if today you are an analyst and you have observed some anomaly that is happening in one of your alert, you have to keep talking with your content management team that hey, I think that this particular sucker is doing something wrong on that particular rule, so can you remove that particular rule? I have a proper business use case that it doesn't qualify for an event of interest for our organization. So your content development team that can go ahead and whitelist maybe or exclude those particular things from your rule. So by using that, you have to be a proper position that you can keep on fine-tuning your alerts until unless you get a good like 100% opportunity that okay, this is a rule which will not trigger a single false positive, right? So that is a quite myth because every rule false like triggers false positive. But if you follow all these 9 steps, I am assuming that you might not be receiving a call at midnight and you might not be so frustrated at the end of the day while looking at the screen and doing nothing. So I am logged into QRadar Community Edition and we have all the log sources that I have just showed you integrated, and all those logs are getting synced to IBM QRadar. Okay, so now what is our first question? So our first question was how many log sources are actually available in the time frame when we are actually doing the investigation, right? So for doing that, it's very easy. We can directly go to the admin tab and we can come to here in the log sources tab, and this page will show you what are the different types of log sources, different types of like categories are present. So as you can see, we have like 15 items here. So Obviously we got our first answer. So 15 log sources are currently available. Okay, so now I will go to the log activity tab, because that is the thing where we will be doing all of our investigation, and I have just added some quick filter which is not relevant to this investigation, and I will go to search and I'll edit the search because I just need to search between a specific time interval. Okay, so when we are inside this page, so if I just scroll into this area, it's called time range, you will have a specific interval or section. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, let's select as like 2020, and I'll go to January 1st 2020 until today, and I will hit search. Okay, so this search will give me the results of everything that has been ingested between these two time frame. Okay, and I will remove this search limit. Okay, because I don't want to limit the searches of like thousands or anything, so I want to see whatever else is available. Okay, so now you see everything is getting parsed. What I can do now, so there is like multiple options by which we can do. So what is our second question? So our second question is, what is the domain name that is used in the network? Okay, so now for doing that domain name, so obviously domain name could be found in any kind of logs which is like related to like domain controller logs or anything related to those kind of stuffs, right? So what we can do, we can come here and we can display and like group the searches based on our log sources. Okay, so that will generally gives the all those 15 types of logs that we have, right? So if you come here and you see there is DC log, like then HDFIN, so I'm assuming these are the log sources which is relevant to the domain controller logs. Okay, so let's open one thing and this one. So just remember, when you want to open any particular logs which is grouped, okay, so you can just press an alt key and just double click on that and it will open up another new window. Okay, otherwise it will open on the same window and you need to go back and forth like that. Okay, so yeah, so I am here now. So what I can do, I can open any of the files. So let's do one thing, let's group it again by event name. So by doing that, we will actually know what are the different types of logs present in the DCs. Okay, so you see host logout, user login success. Okay, let's pick up this one because I am assuming like success audit will obviously have a particular parameter that calls as like a computer name, right? So we will have that computer name information as our DC because that is our domain, right? What is used in this network. Okay, so if you come to the this bottom section, you see this is the whole payload. By default this payload will be like that, so you can just click it and you see obviously there should be a computer. Yeah, so you see this is a computer name, so that means our domain name is hackdefend.local. okay, so we have got our second answer. Okay, so our third question was to identify what is the attacker IP address. Okay, now if you remember, we have a log source which is called as like Suricata, IDS, and we have also Zeek involved, right? So you can see here like Suricata. So Suricata is a kind of like IDS module, like intrusion detection and prevention system. So I am assuming that the whatever, like obviously the attacker would have tried to breach our network, so definitely he or she might have done some recon activity, right? So we will just open this Suricata events and I will again do alt and then double click to open those events to identify what are the events that is getting captured in our IDPS system. Okay, now if you see the events are loaded, so all these things are named as like NIDS alerts. Okay, and you see there are multiple things happening here. So the source IP, destination IP, everything is given. So there could be like reverse traffic also communicating or same kind, because some IP or the like attacker or someone else is might be scanning our network and if that traffic is allowed, so our network and our host machines are also might have been communicating to the attacker machine, right? So the reverse communication is also possible. So what we can do, because we need to identify what is the attacker IP address, so I'll go ahead and edit that particular search. And remember, there is an option in QRadar to identify the direction of the search. Okay, so I'll come down here in the search parameter and I'll search as like direction, then I'll click here R to L, that means remote to local. Okay, so there are other options as well, you can explore them, it's quite self-explanatory. And I'll add the filter up and I'll hit the search. So what it basically does actually, so it will give you the results depending on the log sources, what are the events, what are the traffic that has originated from outside to your network. Okay, so now if you see here, there are like several communication is happening. So I told you, right, we are only concentrated about the IDS alerts. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open the Suricata alerts, which is remote to local. So now as you see here, I have two events that is logged and as an IDS alert, which is remote to local, and log source is obviously Suricata. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and open that particular event and I will see what is inside that. Okay, so now you see there is a rule name triggered, which is like malware possible metasploit payload. And so it is obviously like something fishy is going on, someone is trying to drop a metasploit payload to our machine, which is 2020. Okay, so you can see the next event. You remember there was two events, right? You can just click the next option and it will show you what was our next event. Okay, so now you see there is another event which is like construct bind API, so to our another IP address. So we obviously has received our like another answer. So what is our malware or like attacker IP address? This attacker IP address is this one. Okay, so we have to remember this because in our next series of question that might come handy. Okay, so our next question was, what was the IP address or the machine details of our first infected machine? Okay, so now if I go to the return event logs, which is the two alerts, like two events that we received from Suricata. Now if you come here and you will see that there is like a time field also mentioned here, right? So one time field is on 8th November and one is 9th November. Okay, so this is the first event that came to our QRadar, and obviously this is the parsing data. So I'll just go ahead and click that, and you see this is the IP address. So this is the destination IP, right? So we identify this is our source IP, so this is our destination IP. So we got another answer, which is our like first infected machine. So you see the metasploit payload has obviously dropped on that particular IP address. So in our next course of investigation, we will find another like several other evidences also that this machine has obviously been exploited, okay, using metasploit. But if we go to the previous alert and you see that, so obviously the start time is 9:51. And also one thing, just let me tell you, so there are three times, right? One is start time, storage time, and log source time. So QRadar has a fashion how actually the events comes into QRadar. Okay, so start time means when the alert or this particular event has just got into the pipeline, ingestion pipeline of QRadar. Okay, so the storage time is when the event gets stored at backend server or QRadar. Okay, so our event of interest would be the time which is the log source time, right? So this time is directly coming from the Suricata event itself. So when this particular metasploit payload or attacker tried to attack the network and this particular event dropped on the IDPS system, this is that time. Okay, and if you see here, this this payload time information is obviously like little bit sync, right? So you can see, so this log source time is quite matching with this payload information, right? So this particular sucker here, so obviously this time interval we need to take. Okay, so our next question was, what is the username, or if we can identify any username which the infected machine was using, what is the username basically, right? So you see, so we also have already identified this is our infected machine, the first infected machine. So we can create a search on this IP address that can give us all of the logs information by which we can track easily, right? So what we can do, we can simply right click on this IP address and you see there are information available. So you can go here to information and you can search the event. So what it will do, it will open up a search window for you. So you don't need to do, or you don't need to even create a new search and put all those IP address, destination field, whatever. So you can directly come to this section and you can create the search from this page itself, right? So again, we will go ahead and select our specific interval. What we have selected so far, we'll go ahead with like let's go ahead to like 2019 for the sake. And what I can do, I can simply group by event name, okay? And you see search destination IP address is this one, and I'll click search. Okay, so in that search parameter, so it gave me the result. So what I actually did, so I gave the source or destination IP address from that drop down section, and I searched for the start time to this end time interval. Okay, so that's all I did. And what I have also did, so I have grouped the events with the event name information. Okay, but what actually we are trying to identify, we are trying to identify what is the username which might have logged into the infected machine, right? So for doing that, we can simply come here and we can group it again by username rather event name. Okay, so that will give us a good hint that which was our user that might have been logged into the box. Now you see there are a lot of users that have logged into the box, so you see there are 2 events. Okay, now if you just come here and you see there is something like your intuition will tickle that, okay, so there are 2 named user I can identify, one is Rambo and one is Noor. Okay, but you see the event count is 2 to 1 for Noor, and Rambo it is only for 1, right? So there seems to be something odd with Rambo. Okay, so I'll assume that our like another answer is Noor. Basically this is the particular user who might have logged into this box, or it could be Noor is the owner of the IP address also, that could also be possible. Okay, so let's identify what is the user Rambo and what the hell it is doing, and why it has just done one simple login in our next course of investigation. So our next question is what all the files that got created on the infected machine, and if any, right? So for doing that, we will go back again and we will simply group it by event name, because we want to identify what is the file creation that has been done on this particular IP address. Okay, so now you see there are file create events that is present, and what I can do, I can simply filter on where the event name is file create. So what I did, I just right click on that particular instance and I am just selecting this one. So this will only give me the results where the event name is file create and source and destination IP is our infected machine. Okay, so you see there are 182 events and there is like 162 correlated and co-released event. Okay, so if I open this particular event, so it will give me all of the events which is like file creation on that particular instance. Now how do you actually identify what is the file that got created and how you even distinguish them? So there is an easy option to do that. What I can do, I can simply go inside any particular event, and you see there is like file name, which is a custom event property. If you remember in my previous section, in my previous video, I have showed you how you can write a regex pattern and you can create your custom event mapping, which you can create from this payload, and you can extract the property from the payload, right? So this something similar is going on here. So what I can do, I can simply group the search based on like file name and what I can say then like image name, etc. Okay, so let's do that now. So I'll return to the event list page, I'll edit that particular search. Okay, and remember you can group the search with any of the interval or any of the like event that is possible. Okay, so what I can do, I can write as like file name and there. Okay, so let's do it only file name for this particular tutorial, so you can group it with anything else as well. Now you see there are like some fishy files that is also got created on that particular machine in this whole interval. Now you see there are obvious some file will click your eye, which I can do like AC power download. This looks to be suspicious for me. Then important instruction, this looks to be suspicious. Then important instruction dock zone identifier. So I don't even know what these all files means, right? So you can open any of the file, and I am assuming that this file could be dropped on that particular machine. Okay, so that comes to our next question. If we have identified what are the files got created, can we identify what is the malicious file got created, and if any, and what even like what could be the hash of this particular file, right? So that was our next two questions. So let's try to find out that. Okay, so now what else we can do to correlate? We can check something as like process creation events, right? So I will click one process creation event and it will load all of the process, similarly the files that has been created on the machine. So now if I just click any of the process creation event, obviously it will give me the image name again as the custom event property and like process command line and something else also. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's group this whole event with image name and process command line. So now what I can do, I can edit the search simply, and I will come here to the bottom and I will write as like image. Then I'll group it again with image name, and I can write as like command line also. Okay, as I expected. So you see there is a process command line that is being called after important instruction document. Okay, and you see that it is being called by Microsoft Office, then Office document, then winword.exe. Okay, so that means this is like there could be something like there is a payload instruction or there is a drive-by download, and this particular file has been dropped that we have already seen in past, and now you see there is a process getting load to execute that particular file also. Now it is obvious very much that this particular file is our malicious file, and using that particular file our system has got infected, right? Now we have got our another answer. Now our next question was, so once we have identified what is our like malicious file that has been used to exploit that particular machine, what was is hash, right? So for doing that, what I can do, I can close this particular window and I can go back to the original search, and if you come to the second page you will see that there is a file created low level category which is file create stream hash. Okay, so this particular thing is also like created from I believe Windows events, and since we have a lot of Windows events that is getting ingested, so there is no fuss, right? We have all those information present, right? So sysmon can log any damn thing that is happening on your machine, right? So now if you come here, so you will see that this is the same file that is like important instruction document, and this file has been downloaded by Firefox, and previously we see we have that document dot some doc.exe is getting triggered by this particular document file. Okay, and now you see you have the MD5 hash also. Okay, so you can check that particular hash in VirusTotal, or like if you can dump the memory of that particular infected machine, you can probably find this particular sucker and you can directly do a static investigation on that file to identify what is going on that file. Okay, so our next question is, can we identify if there is any new user that has been created on the machine? Okay, so for doing that there is an option. So if I don't remember what is the Windows event ID to identify a new user creation. Okay, so let's search in the Google user ID creation event id. Okay, so there is a particular event id that will be obviously tagged. So now you see 4728 is the Windows event id that triggers when a particular user is getting created. Okay, so now let's search in that particular instance. Okay, so I don't need any of this. So what we can, so we can edit that particular search. So this is our very base search that we have done in the past. Okay, so I will remove this direction one, and inside that I will write as event id, which is 4720. Okay, and I will add that particular filter to identify what is the user that might have created. Okay, now you see there is like only one event that has triggered. Okay, let's open that particular sucker and let's see what is the user that is also getting created. Okay, so you see gradually there is every option present in the logs, and there is a way that QRadar is hell powerful tool, I must admit, and you can see everything that is happening inside a system. Right now you see Rambo, right? So administrator has created a user called Rambo. Now if you come here, you will see that the security id is hack defense, so this is obviously our domain, and you see the SAM account information is Rambo. Now you know why there is only one successful attempt on Rambo and there is multiple in that other user, right? Use that Noor. Okay, so now we have that, we can surely tell that Noor is our legitimate user and Rambo is created by the attacker on that particular instance. Okay, now we have also identified where actually Rambo got created. So Rambo got created on the machine of the infected one, right? So the IP address was ending with 15, if you remember that. So we have another answer clicked. Okay, now we are getting at the end of our investigation, where our next two answers, and these are the last answers that we need to answer and probably find out. I don't know whether I can able to find it or not. So the last answer is like if the user has exfiltrated something, and whether we can identify if the user has done some lateral movement or not. Okay, so for doing that, obviously exfiltration, lateral movement, this kind of thing can be tagged by something like, I am assuming IDPS instance, if there is any proxy, so those kind of thing can come into picture, right? So what I can do, I can simply clear up my event ID from this particular section, and I will again go to Suricata event, and let's find out if there is anything which can match that, whether the user or the attacker has tried to exfiltrate something or not. Okay, so for this time what we can do, we can simply use this rule name section to group our Suricata events. Okay, so let's go back to our event page, and I will simply edit that particular search, and I will group the search with event name. Okay, and I am assuming there has to be some matches. Okay, so you see these are all the rules that has been triggered by our Suricata. Now you see there is this particular instance which is triggering my intuition. Okay, so it says curl user agent outbound. Now obviously if you are working in cybersecurity and you know what the hell is curl, okay, so we use this particular curl to do some like download, then something upload and some kind of stuff. So you see that there has been curl instance also identified by our IDPS system. Now if I go down and you see in the payload section, if you come here, payload printable put sammy.xls. okay, and this is our host. So obviously you remember this is our attacker IP address, okay, that we have identified in our very first question. Okay, now you see the n host and this 8000 IP address is getting and you see this particular payload information is quite clear, right? So this particular information is telling us that yes, attacker has obviously exfiltrated something. Right now, if I just go back to my search window, you will see there are two other events also present, which tells that lateral movement has also been attempted on that particular instance, right? So now we have seen that there are like two IP address. One is ending with 10.15, which is our first machine, and we have also seen that 20.20 ending machine was also been tried to exploit, and that machine was also talking to the attacker IP address, okay, also, right? So that means obviously that lateral movement has been done and attacker is also successful while doing that. Okay, yeah, so that brings to the end of this particular episode. I think I have dragged it a bit longer, but what do you think? Do you think it worth to invest this much of time to learn false positive reduction, and at least you have learned in technical way how you can investigate an alert or incident from first step on a kill chain till the very end stage of exfiltration, right? Let me know what do you think about this particular episode, and if you have any particular suggestion for me or content request, feel free to post that. And have you hacked YouTube today? Ethically, of course. So you have to click all the buttons, like click the subscribe button, click the bell icon, and what else is there? I guess you can comment, you can share it with your peers so that BlackPerl can get some more audience, which can be beneficial for both parties, for me and for your peers as well. So that's all. I'll catch you guys next time. Stay healthy and stay safe.